5:38 now to a first alert. Wisconsin Maritime Museum staff in Manitowoc says it does not condone posters placed outside its establishment with what they're calling hateful messages.
Take a look at your screen here. These two individuals wearing ski masks allegedly put those posters on the Riverwalk alongside the USS Cobia last Friday. Staff removed those posters on Saturday. The museum did not share those posters with the public because it did not want to, quote, provide a platform for hate groups or their hurtful beliefs, end quote.
And this comes after protesters rallied near the museum last weekend against a white nationalist group known as Patriot Front. As we've reported, members from that group reportedly made a pair of appearances in Manitowoc and Sheboygan last Sunday. We reached out to Manitowoc police, and the department would not confirm if the two people in those ski masks are part of the white nationalist group. We'll keep you updated as we learn anything new on that. Let's check in with